All right. Hello, Nancy. Welcome. I'm excited to have you join me today and chat more about your career and your leadership in ag tech in that world. So I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself. If you would like to share where you are now, how long you've been there, and how long you've been doing that. Love to hear.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be interviewed today. So thank you. I started my career in 1989 at what was then American Cyanamid. I was a production planner for our herbicides and insecticides. So it was a big ag chem company, and I had no farming background, no ag background whatsoever. I grew up in the suburbs, but I was a supply chain major in college. And American Cyanamid happened to be hiring people for their supply chain group. They were growing at the time. And that's really how I became a person in ag. And I was there for 13 years. So, you learn something along the way and you become more proficient in ag. And I probably knew as much about ag as I did about supply chain. Cyanamid was great with training. They would have us go out to the field, ride with sales reps, and really did a lot to educate us about agriculture and what our products did, how they worked, what crops they worked on. So it was great for me. That was a great way to start my career and get involved and really learn a lot. And I just did various positions there. Customer service, transportation, warehousing, inventory management, all within pretty much supply chain. And just kind of had different management positions. I was very fortunate because, not long after I was out of college, they really did give you a lot of responsibility and they let you kind of do your thing. And it was like, what is the phrase? Better to ask for forgiveness than permission. It was kind of like, just do it, get it done, get what you have to get done. So made many, many wonderful lifelong friends there that, ag is such a small industry, really. And you just know so many people after a while and, I worked with this person, I worked with that person. So it was a great start to my career. And then I had my kids and I actually stayed home for a little bit. I took a little bit of a break, about 5 years. Although during that time, a few people that I had worked with at Cyanamid, our division got sold to BASF. So a few people, when that whole thing happened, went off and started consulting firms. And sometimes they would have a project that would require some supply chain expertise. So they would call me, and it was wonderful for me because it gave me the opportunity to step out of my mom role and go back to sort of being a professional, maybe travel a little bit, and not have that major gap in my resume that, a lot of people experience when they step out of the workforce. So I just did little consulting projects here and there. And then in 2006, Mike Karst had started his own consulting firm and asked me to come on part-time. So I went back to work part-time. I did about 25 hours a week and went from, the whole corporate side to a tiny consulting firm where you had to do everything. You were your own IT person. You made all your own travel arrangements. Anything that needed to get done, you just needed to do it. And it was a lot different, but and also then, I was hired mainly for supply chain projects, but, at a small consulting firm, you do what needs to get done. And so started getting involved in a lot of market research, strategy and things that I had not been involved in before and learned a ton. And so that company, Entira, was just bought in November by my current employer. So I now work for Sustainable Oils, which is a subsidiary of Global Clean Energy Holdings. So that's kind of where I got. So 13 years at Cyanamid, 5 years off, and then 16 years at Entira.
And how does that lead up to, I guess, your path led up to this career, your job that you're at now? How do you feel like that all connected to what you're doing today?
Well, it kind of comes full circle because what happened with my current employer, Sustainable Oils, they were originally a client of ours, and they hired us to help them. So the crop, they're the seed company slash energy company. The crop we grow is camelina. We have proprietary varieties. And so we were hired to sort of get this off the ground, get growers to sign on to grow camelina. And then where I came in then is, how do we get the seed to the growers? And then once it's grown, how do we get that grain to where it needs to go to be turned into renewable diesel? So now all of a sudden I'm right back in supply chain again and doing some of the things I started doing early in my career. And it's just been, I mean, it's been a wild ride because Sustainable Oils is a startup. So it's, they hired us because they didn't have the resources to do a lot of these things. So we were doing them, and it's been so much fun to be part of a business that's growing and to be able to reach back into my early days of my career and use some of the knowledge that I had from then, and also from different projects that we've had with clients with Tyra along the way, who were setting up new ERP systems, or, developing their distribution network, and how are we going to do that? So I got to do some of those things again and, use that expertise. And it was really, really beneficial. But at the same time, learn a lot of new things, because I, in my previous career, even though I had worked with transportation, it was chemicals, and that's mainly, a liquid being moved, or sometimes it was a dry formulation, but it's mainly truck movements. Mm-hmm. And here, when we have grain being delivered and shipped to the West Coast, we're doing it in rail cars. So it's a whole new area, in a sense, that you now get to learn about. So little learning, little knowledge from before, mash
That's
up.
interesting. Yeah, like supply chain, thinking about how it's really a diverse topic. I mean, it can be, like you said, all those different varieties of how do you get something to where it needs to be at the right time. It's a lot of logistics. But right now, what you've done in your career has all been within agriculture?
Yes. Yep. Nice. Always within ag.
Yeah. It's a great community. Like you said, it's like once you realize it's really a smaller community of people, you do start running into people at different events, and network with people, which is one beautiful reason why I like bringing this group together for women that are specifically in AgTech too.
Yes.
So my next question, it's kind of a big one, but I'm sure that it's already been underlined in things you've been saying so far, but why you're passionate about the work that you do, or how you think, and I know that it does, because agriculture in general changes the world, but how does your passion also lead to helping change the world?
I would say on a couple different fronts, because being someone who did not grow up on a farm, and not, I grew up on the East Coast, I didn't grow up in the Midwest, or, any kind of a major farming area, and learning about that whole part of our country and our economy. And it's such a huge part of both of those things. I felt like, it was great for me, because most of my friends and family don't know anything about that. And I could kind of help educate people on what really happens out there in the ag community, and in the farming communities. And, a lot of what you hear is not always the reality. So it's been, sort of a passion for me to try and bring the message to people who, don't have a view to that the way that I do. And then more recently with Sustainable Oils, it's easy to be passionate about a startup, and especially camelina, because it's got a really good carbon index. And so it's wonderful for the environment. It's grown, or can be grown, on fallow land. So, you're not taking the place of a food crop. It's supplemental. And then it's being used for renewable diesel. So, the end use is great. So it's a benefit to farmers, and it's a benefit to, the environment, and kind of where a lot of people are going, and where they see, things need to head. So, it's easy to be passionate about something like that. As a matter of fact, earlier in my career, when I was, doing ag chem, sometimes I felt like I had to defend things a little more. But now it's much simpler when you have a story like Camelina that is an easy to tell story. So
it's very impressive. I did look up the different things they were doing before our chat today, and I was just like, wow, it's so impressive to see the good work going in. Startups, they help disrupt the world and make those changes that we all have been looking for. So it's really exciting, and I'll be looking to follow to see how that grows and expands.
And it's great for Montana growers, although we're going to be in many states right now. Our main focus is Montana, and they get to be a part of something that they haven't traditionally been a part of, and it can really be a benefit to them, especially because of the way the crop fits in with the climate. It's very dry, but Camelina is not a high water intensity crop, so it's like a great fit, for a lot of reasons. So it's a nice thing for the growers in that area too. You can feel like you're delivering something that they really can use and bring value to them. So
great.
Yeah.
So this question might be a little stump worthy, but hopefully it doesn't throw you off too much. But in our careers, especially as women working in technology, working in a typically non-female field in AgTech, is there anything that was surprising or that stuck with you as an experience that you would want to share with other women who are also in the industry?
I would say I've always been treated fairly by pretty much everyone I've ever worked with in ag. I think if you either know what you're talking about, or if you don't, just admit that you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm here to learn from you. People are receptive. That's my experience overall. But I guess, as a woman, or as a younger woman kind of coming into the workforce, I think I had a different idea of how, the difficulty of being a mom and working. As I shared with you earlier, I stepped away for a little bit to be home with my kids. And I think there's always that working moms feeling bad about leaving their kids, and then moms that are home feeling like they're not doing anything, or they're not contributing, or they're not professional. And I think you just have to do what's best for you. And just because something works for someone else, you have to decide and make your own choices. So I was lucky to be in the workforce, step away, and be able to come back, and don't regret doing any of that. And I think my advice to a young woman coming up in our business is just do what feels right for you. And that's all you can do. You can't worry about what other people are doing, or, feeling bad about your own. Just make your choices and be happy with your choices. I would see a lot of people feel guilty one way or the other, and it's not necessary.
As a mom, I feel that all the time. I only have one, and I did take about 6 months off in between because I didn't know what it was going to be like to be a mom. I was like, oh my gosh, like, can I do this? Can I not? And I love my child, but I did realize that being in the workforce was my choice. And, it didn't have to be one or the other. You could still be a mom and do work, but there is that mom guilt, work guilt. It's like back and forth of a balance, I guess.
Right. And I struggled with that a little when my kids were younger. They were in daycare. They did go to daycare when I first had them. And I found that I was struggling with that a little. And although I loved my job, so it was very much a push and pull for me. And and then I just decided, hey, I'm going to take this time off, and I'm not going to feel bad about it, and whatever happens happens. And that's what I did. But as women, we have to be careful not to judge each other for our choices too, and that's really important. That's probably also a message I would send. And I guess the other thing is, I didn't realize it might be an option to do some things part-time, but I think after my own experience, we also hired, my consulting firm and Tyra hired some people who were people who started out like me. They were professionals. They had an area of expertise within agriculture. They wanted to work, but they didn't want that full-time going to an office 9 to 5 type of work situation. So we hired a few different people. We hired a marketing communications person at one point. And she was great. She was a mom. She did not want to work full-time. She wanted to go in an office. She lived in Iowa, and she just worked for us probably about 15 hours a week. And, you know, it was a win-win for us because we didn't need a full-time person, but yet she brought so much experience and expertise that it was fantastic to have her. And she was in an area where sometimes we would do interviews for market research that we were doing. So she could go and do a face-to-face interview for us, being where she was. It was perfect. So, you know, I think as maybe you come up in your role in management, which, you know, I am in now, looking for sometimes those kind of opportunities for people and kind of, you know, reaching back down, you know, you got up here and now it's on you to reach back down and find those people because they're out there. And we just have to maybe sometimes figure out a way to connect employers who want that kind of arrangement with people who are looking for that kind of arrangement. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think hopefully, I mean, things are evolving slightly with how the workforce is shifting with what we dealt with in the last couple of years. We're more open to remote working in general. But I could see a whole lot of doors open if you don't have that like exact rigidness of what this job should be or who should be in it. Yeah, working 15 hours a week might get the job done. It might be exactly what somebody's looking for in a job and a career.
Exactly. And then when you're ready, if you want to step back in full time, then it's kind of a nice, you've got a foot in the door and you've also got, you know, either a foot in the door or something to talk about on an interview because you've had that little bit of, you know, experience. So
yeah.
So I don't know. I'm trying to think what else was surprising. I think that, you know, I think it was probably just more, you know, not really knowing what to expect as a working mom, woman in agriculture or really in any field. But that's probably was my biggest surprise.
Yeah, because even that has its everything around it, so like what it's like to leave your job and be at home and what that would look like to re-enter. And I'm glad to hear the positivity behind your story, and it doesn't sound scary that you did all that either. So
not at all. It wasn't. Nope. Surprisingly easy, almost too easy. I got lucky, but
good. Well, I think that's the last of my questions specifically, but was there anything else that you would like to share with other women in AgTech?
Just that I think as a community, we can always do more to support each other. So I guess looking for ways to support each other and applaud each other, cheer each other on. I have had many wonderful female bosses. Shout out to Sheila O'Day, back from the American Cyanamid days, and she went on to Ag Data to have a great career there. And she was a wonderful mentor to me. So I guess the other thing would be, if you can mentor someone formally or informally, I've benefited, and I hope I've also passed that on to people in my career. It's been incredibly helpful. So
that is a wonderful statement, I think, to wrap up on, because as we do more of these, hopefully we can see this thread that's through all of these interviews, talking with other women in AgTech. One reason this group started was to share this sense of community, to support each other, lift each other up, and be there to help others when they have questions for an experience you've been through before, or you might know the right person to point somebody to. Hopefully this group can grow and expand and inspire others. So I appreciate your time today, Nancy. And I don't know if you would like people to reach out to you if they have questions, or post them even on here on the Women in AgTech group. But we'd love to be able to connect people with other people. So if you're open to that.
Absolutely. You can post my email or my phone, and any of that is fine.
Wonderful.
Would love to help someone.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.